Now, my mamaw died shortly before I left for Iraq in 2005. And when we went through her things, we found 19 loaded handguns. The thing is, they were stashed all over her house, under her bed, in her closet, in the silverware drawer. And we wondered what was going on, and it occurred to us that towards the end of her life, Mamaw couldn't get around so well. And so this frail old woman made sure that no matter where she was within arm's length of whatever she needed to protect her family. That's who we fight for. That's American spirit.
That's great. That's JD at the convention, of course, talking about Mamaw. My wife's from East Tennessee. Her papaw had guns just like that stored all over the house. He hid one in a cereal box and forgot it was there and poured out his cereal, and it poured out and shattered the bowl. But that ties into what we talked about in the first segment, right? Self-reliant. No one, it's on me. I'm not going to wait for the police to come and protect me and my family. It's all on me. That's his culture. It's called hillbilly culture. Technically, it's called Scotch-Irish or Scotch-Irish. Some say Scotch, some say Scott. This is all you need to know about JD. Also, worth knowing, Donald Trump's mom was born and raised in the most isolated island off of Scotland. So this all applies to everything you need to know about Donald Trump. You need to know his mom is from this remote island in Scotland and his dad's from Queens. So you put those two cultures together, you get Donald Trump. You put JD Vance in his culture, and you get JD Vance. Scotch-Irish. President James Buchanan, he said, "My Ulster blood is my most priceless heritage." What is Ulster blood? There were 4 distinct groups of people who came over to America early in our founding. This isn't 1800s or 1900s immigration. I'm talking 16 and 1700s into the New World. One of those major groups were from Ulster County, Ireland. We have a map here. You can see Ireland. The northernmost area is called Ulster County. Just to the east of that, you see Scotland. This area in between Scotland and England were called the Badlands of Scotland. It was all these areas I'm talking about were very lawless, war-torn, very rough, tough place to be. Now, Thomas Sowell makes the point that if there was a massive immigration of Scotch-Irish in the 1800s, then the South would be not that much different from the North. But because the Scotch-Irish came to America in the 1700s, it was a very different group of people. These people were known, even across the pond, they were known for their poverty, backwardsness, lawlessness, violence. Life was wild, unknown, unpredictable, unreliable. Everything was about the moment because there was no guarantee of tomorrow. They were also a very proud people living in constant warfare. This group of people, these Scotch-Irish people, came to America and settled in what we now call Appalachia. When they were over in England, over in Scotland and Ireland, they were called crackers and rednecks. They were called Hoosiers. And then that name came over and was applied mostly to people in Indiana. But all those come from this area over in Ulster County, Ireland, and the Scottish Badlands. That's hillbilly culture today. These people fought all the time, rough and tumble fighting, they called it, where you could bite and rip out people's eyeballs and hit below the belt. There was a stubborn pride. A lot of cons about this culture. One of the cons, there's pros and cons of every culture. We started off the show talking about some pros. Here are some cons. One con is they're perceived as lazy. But really what this comes from is they grew up in a culture where there's no tomorrow. There's no tomorrow. There's no need to plan for the future because there's going to be a war here tomorrow. Like, what's the point? There is no future. An example of this from back in the day, in 1860, the South had 40% of the dairy cows in the whole country, but only produced 20% of the butter and 1% of the cheese. Why? Because the Germans in Wisconsin had a different culture. They had a culture of hard work, paying attention to detail, planning for the future. They built barns for the cows to live in the winter. The hillbillies in the South let their cows roam wild, and they barely made it through alive. German culture, very different than hillbilly culture. In Wisconsin, they were very attentive to detail, steady habits year-round, routine. In the South, it was just enough to live another day. What's the point of doing any more than just necessary? There may be no tomorrow anyway. There's tons of examples like this. I cannot recommend enough the book by Thomas Sowell, Black Rednecks and White Liberals. It has a whole chapter all about this. A lot of pride in the South. John C. Calhoun, he said, no Southern man, not even the poorest or the lowest, will under any circumstance perform menial labor. He has too much pride for that. J.D. Vance, he wrote in Hillbilly Elegy, he said, hillbillies learn from an early age to deal with uncomfortable truths by avoiding them or by pretending better truths exist. This tendency might make for psychological resilience, but it also makes it hard for Appalachians to look at themselves honestly. J.D. Vance talks a lot about this in Hillbilly Elegy, the pride of the Appalachian people. One of J.D.'s messages is to bring hope to people who lost it, to bring hope to young kids like he was, that, there is a tomorrow, that you can make better choices. We can plan for the future. You can build barns for your cows because there is a tomorrow. And get rid of this victim attitude. Get rid of that chip on your shoulder. No matter where you're from or what your skin color is, you can make better choices. There is something to be proud of, and there is something to live for. It's one of the points of Hillbilly Elegy. And you can also love this country. J.D. wrote in Hillbilly Elegy, he said, don't watch the you can watch the movie if you want, but read the book. He said, when I was a kid, the first time I realized that there was something unique about Jackson and its people was there was a funeral passing by. And my grandma said, we got to get out. We got to stand at attention. And I said, why, Mama? Why are we doing all this? Why does everybody stop and stand at attention when a funeral motorcade passes by? And she said, because, honey, we're hill people. We respect our dead. And J.D. says it made me realize that there was something very important about the identity of hill people that both my grandma and the rest of Jacksonians in Kentucky took on. J.D. is going to bring an incredible perspective, life perspective, a cultural perspective to the White House. And I'm here for it. I'm excited about him. I'll end with this. I've heard and said my whole life that, and I've said this because I thought this was like some sort of like brilliant point, that America is an idea. And there's good ideas about America, but it was Tucker Carlson and J.D. were the first two people I ever heard who made the point that America is more than just an idea. It's a real place. It's a real actual place. I was born here. My kids were born here. My home is here. My church is here. There are mountains and rivers. It's a real place. It's not just an idea. The problem with saying America is just an idea is then people could come in and say, well, it's a bad idea. And if it's a bad idea, then we can vandalize your idea. We can invade your idea. We can tear down your idea because it's a bad idea. But it's like, whoa, it's a real place too. So I've heard that from JD, and there's many speeches where JD talks about this. Actually, at the convention, he ended his speech talking about how America is more than just an idea. It's actually a place. But he was upstaged by a World War II veteran. That same day that JD spoke, this World War II veteran spoke at the convention, and here's what he said. I'll never forget this.
America, people say, America is an idea, but I believe America is much more than that. America is our home.
I will play that clip the rest of my life. I will think about that clip. I will always chuckle at that clip. That's so profound and insightful. Why does this matter? So, right, you get the progression, right? So it's like, America's an idea. No, it's a real place. No, it's our home. You don't let anyone invade your home. You don't let people vandalize your home. America's our home. That World War II veteran ended his speech not just with God bless America, like everyone always has and always, right? He said, God bless our home. I bring that up because I think JD gets that instinctually at his bones, in his blood. I'm excited to see what he can do as VP and what he can do to carry forward the MAGA legacy.